Hi there, everyone. It is 1 o'clock on the West Coast. We welcome you to the live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, along with my co-host, Edgar Zazueta. I'm Alikhan. We're happy to have you back after the holiday week. Edgar, how are you today?
Good to see you, Naj. And I missed you last week, but I get to be back into the swing of things here.
That's right. And I am, and we'll tackle this topic a little bit deeper, but I am wearing my navy blue and white today because I am celebrating the return of Big Ten football and my Penn State Nittany Lions. We'll talk more in depth about college football coming up a little bit later on in the show because, Edgar, I know you have some comments on Pac-12 football, I would assume.
Yeah, somebody was asking me the other day, we're talking about my Lakers being in the playoffs and Dodgers in the midst of it, and they're like, it's basketball season, it's baseball, it's everything season right now. It's like Pac-12 football right now, just given the events in the world. But
we're gonna literally try and squeeze in every type of athletic activity that we possibly can during this time frame. Folks, again, we welcome your questions and comments. We're happy to have you. Tell us where you're coming from, where you're watching us today. We'll say hello to you. We've got a really, really packed show for you today. Paul Gothold, the county superintendent in San Diego, is going to be joining us to talk a little bit about some breaking news that came in yesterday. Edgar, let's tackle a couple of important issues that we're hearing feedback from our members. First, let's tackle the waivers situation. We are hearing now charter schools, private schools are having more approval on their waivers, but we have not really heard about public schools getting any waiver attention. What are you hearing out of the Capitol and CDE?
Yeah, that I think it comes as no surprise that now that the state gave authority to go and open up schools, elementary schools, per the waiver process, we're seeing some of those numbers come in, and the preliminary data there, it's the vast majority of the schools that have been approved have been actually private schools. I think even more so than charters. I think just combing through the list, there's not many traditional public schools or even a lot of charter schools at this point that have been approved for a waiver. There's a big reason for that, mind you, is that I don't believe that a lot of them have applied, especially on the traditional public schools. There may be some more charter schools that are applying around the state. And the one thing that, even though the state gave authority for this waiver process, this is also playing out county by county, like in so many other issues with COVID, that in some counties, their public health officer has invited folks to apply. In others, they have kind of held off on moving in that direction. But as it stands now, the vast majority of the schools that are opening up per this waiver process are private schools, and that does pose some questions, right? Some questions in terms of equity, some issues that we'll get into with Paul. But yes, that's kind of what we've learned so far on those that have applied for those waivers.
And we want to say hello to Angela and Amy Collier, two of our very loyal viewers. We have two Sarahs, and I believe that they are new viewers of ours. Sarah coming in from Folsom and another Sarah coming in from Modesto City Schools. So welcome to the show. Welcome to all of you. Holly, our former president, is on the show with us today. So again, happy to have all of you with us. Edgar, let's tackle one more issue over at the state capitol and CDE, and that's the attendance situation. We're hearing a lot of feedback from our members, from educators as a whole, about confusion and some frustration and basically opinions back and forth on the attendance situation. ACSA has a voice in on this. Can you tell us a little bit about the advocacy from ACSA?
Yeah, just to set a little bit of the context here, as part of the state budget and some of the requirements that came through for distance learning, there's a requirement for a weekly engagement record for all students. So not only are they attending on that day, but how they're meeting the requirements of a daily live interaction, and something we talked about weeks ago, that the schools have to account for that. So I'd have to say that this is one issue from every one of our members, from site administrators, superintendents, county superintendents we've heard from, all the way down to, and also working with some of our partners in labor and teachers association. Pretty much everybody's had a concern about, is this taking away time from instructional minutes, from time that we could obviously be dedicating to students. The thought that these requirements on accountability may be a bit onerous. So we've tried to be sensitive to some of that feedback, taking that feedback back to the California Department of Education. And we got some early indication from them. We have to give credit to Superintendent Thurman and his staff that they've been receptive to that feedback and indicated they're open to some changes. Now their changes are going to have some parameters because they are just implementing what the legislature actually put in place. But there is some thought that they may make some changes either to the template or some clarification on some of the requirements that schools will have to abide by. So all in all, I think that's good news.
And we've been monitoring the governor's news conference, his daily news conference, and it kind of adds a little bit to our next guest here. Because there has been discussion over the last couple of days about the statistics in San Diego County. So we want to go ahead and talk specifically about that news that broke yesterday and what is happening in the capital. So joining us today is the county superintendent from San Diego. Paul Gothold joins us here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. Paul, Naj, Alikhan, Edgar, Zazueta, so happy to have you with us today. It's an honor.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Paul, I want to be responsible in how I give you some of this information. This came in from the San Diego Union Tribune. The headline, San Diego County headed to more restrictive tier because of cases over at San Diego State. New data with an uptick in positive coronaviruses at SDSU were a factor, and now there's the risk of the region moving from one level to another. UT reporting that if they exclude the cases, the 436 cases over at San Diego State, that the region would be below the threshold. But the UT also reports 75% of the confirmed infections involve people living off campus, and many of those living in San Diego County, living in the college area. So there's some of this setup here. It's an example of how things are fluid, how things can change. Right now, through your lens, how are you assessing the information that came out of the state yesterday with regard to San Diego County?
Yeah, great question, and one that we clarified with our superintendents even prior to this news break. First and foremost, what I have learned and where the position our county health department took is when you are already in red and you've had plans to open, if you go back to purple, you can still open schools. That was a really strong message from our county health and how they are interpreting this, how the rules are set up. And so regardless of what's happening there, we will still have the ability and the option to open schools when we came off the watch list on September 1st. Now, having said that, what we have decided to do as an agency in support of our 42 districts and charter schools is really take a look at case rates by region. We think that this is important for many reasons. Remember, this ability to open up schools September 1st is an average of everyone in the county. And our county is like many others, is diverse. We have our military community in the base. We have rural communities. We have our coastal communities, North County, South Bay, everything in between. And one size does not fit all. So what we started to do was take all of these case rates around the county with the data that was available to us publicly, combined with some other data points from the municipalities, and put together a chart for our superintendents so they could really take a look at those risk factors in their own local context. You know, we have some communities where, and even schools that we directly supervise. We have a school called Monarch that's for homeless youth in downtown San Diego. Many of the students living next door in the shelter. Huge spikes in infection rates in that particular region. It would just be irresponsible to just say, okay, everybody come back. But we can come up with an alternative method of seeing kids in very small groups and pods to provide the service they so desperately need and deserve, how we go about feeding them, everything else. And every community is very different. So you have some districts that really don't have these large infection rates. In fact, they are so small. They're in the single digits. You're going to be looking at a reopening plan very differently in that context than you would in some of our communities where you have thousands of cases, multi-generational families, higher propensity of severe cases and deaths. you just can't treat this metric across the board one size fits all.
Dr. Gothold, Paul, thank you for joining us. And thank you just for your leadership across the state. I know San Diego was at the forefront when we were talking about reopening. You guys really led the charge there on putting out some plans that really all of us around the state were able to lean on and support our members. So just thank you for everything you've been doing down supporting our kids, supporting our schools. And you spoke to this in your answer about the diversity of San Diego. You know, folks think San Diego, you think about your beautiful beaches there. You think about, obviously, you have San Diego Unified, one of the biggest districts in the nation. But as you stated, it looks different depending where you're at in your vast county. What does that mean in terms of the landscape of who's opening, who's thinking about opening? Just give us a lay of the land in terms of people. I feel like there's been a lot of eyes on our more populous counties like San Diego, like Orange County, in terms of what was going to happen when they got off of purple and were at least eligible to reopen. So give us kind of where things stand in the county.
Sure. So right now we have, some of our highly affluent and then, Cajon Valley, two very different communities that have already opened their doors. We have more districts following in the next 2 weeks, and some of our South Bay districts opening up potentially October 1st. So we've all taken kind of a gradual and very careful approach to this. But if you look at the structure of how our districts are reopening, I think we've been very thoughtful about making sure we really understand to the best of our ability the health metric combined with the benefits of having kids in person at school in these very small groups of kids. School does not look like it did last year. If you go to Cajon Valley or some of our other districts that are open, there, you will see the footprints of all of those health orders across the board, within the classroom, outside the classroom. But I think we are slated to have maybe 20 or so out of the 42 districts actually opening their doors to kids within the next month or so.
And again, folks, we want to encourage you to send in your questions and comments. We've had, it appears that we've got a number of new viewers today. Mina Blasi is saying hello to us, Jennifer Slater-Sanchez, and of course, our great board member, Daniel Hernandez over at Sac City Unified. Paul, the color-coded system and the tiers, they've created some uncertainty across the state about how you evaluate the data. Can decisions through your lens be made at the district level, at the county level with some level of confidence?
Yeah, I think that what we're trying to interpret those for our districts. As the rules have changed, one of the things that struck me just in presenting to our Board of Supervisors yesterday was, we pivoted to distance learning last March, right? And then in June, we had the go-ahead for the safety reopening of our schools. That was in June 12th. So we were all focused on building reopening plans in June. Immediately thereafter, in mid-July, the governor comes out with the county watch list, and you have to be in distance learning. So we immediately then began to pivot backward to that. Now that we are in a color-coded session, we weren't as affected as other counties because we were already in that position of 14 days off the watch list. But when it comes down to it, I think the easiest way to remember it is that once you are into that last phase of the color, and I get confused because red is usually associated with stop or bad, not necessarily purple, but once you're in red and you can sustain that for 14 days, you're eligible to reopen. That's as simple as we can break it down. One of the things we do in our county is that we meet with our superintendents every Friday. So we have a health update. Many times we'll have our partners in county health give updates from their perspective. Right now, the biggest issue for us in reopening, by the way, isn't the color-coded system. It's how you're going to test employees, how you're going to administer what's recommended by the state guidance for reopening. So about a month ago, we pitched to our Board of Supervisors the need for this. Many bargaining units are demanding the requirement of testing employees, and we were fortunate to get $4 million allocated for San Diego to do COVID testing of employees, and that has kind of stimulated this direction to bring more kids to schools now that we have that in place. So where we are now is really working on the logistics. Assuming all of our schools and districts are open, we are now charged with testing 80,000 school employees as a recommendation of the state, 50% every 1 month, 100% every 2 months. So you can imagine the task at hand for our office to coordinate those activities. But at the end of the day, it's not going to cost our districts a penny.
You know what, Paul, let me ask you this question that's coming from Holly Eads, who's our past president here at ACSA. She asks, can you share some strategies that districts have implemented, such as implementing passive active screening of students, transportation of students, etc., and what you're hearing is working and not working, and maybe some of the successes and challenges with it?
I think that, that it would be a great conversation with some of our local districts, but I can tell you what many of our lessons learned happened in the summer when we opened up our emergency childcare pop-up centers, on how to really teach kids how to use masks effectively. You have to spend time with children talking about what this virus is, how it's impacting us, and why we have to operate under such different conditions. What I would layer on top of that what we've been doing with our school sites is really having more thoughtful conversations around race and around how our kids are connected or not in our schools, and teaching the adults to facilitate those conversations and give kids the space to talk about what they've been going through the past few months with some of the social issues and everything else. So, a lot of this is really spending the time and energy. We found it necessary. Katie McNamara brought this to our attention. Can you guys produce videos? Because there's so many new things that we have to work out when kids and adults do come back to school. So we've been pumping out training videos, really just how to maintain in this new environment. But it's a shift, and all of these are conditioned behaviors that we're not used to. It's counterintuitive to the human condition, where we are social. Kids love to hug, and having to retrain and recondition folks is absolutely necessary.
Paul, we got a question about San Diego schools. Danya asked, for schools that have reopened, kind of making this decision in terms of when they must close, given when they come up positive, whether it be staff or students. I know there's still some confusion about those metrics. Obviously, something you guys thought a lot about in terms of your reopening plans. As you stated, the state gave some guidance. It feels like some of that guidance was like an eternity ago, and the world has changed. But kind of what's the county's best thinking on helping local leaders make these decisions on when they should stay open, when they should close?
So again, these are strictly local decisions. I could tell you that the best we can do is give you all the parameters, what the conditions should look like in school. Are you equipped to do that right now? Can you support all of your children? Can you make it happen within the context of your schedule? Then that's an appropriate decision. All of this has to do with what's in your reopening plan. You cannot over communicate this enough. Is it clear? Is it concise? And have you had those agreements in place with your bargaining unit members as to what those schedules look like, arrival, dismissal times, where you're eating, everything. So I think for us, our guidance looks a little different. It doesn't say when to do this. It says this is how you do it should you decide to open in this manner. And it really gives you the structure of how to do your screening, entrance, and everything else under the sun. It gives you sample block schedules and things of that nature. So I know for a fact that there are boards in our county that are absolutely not, our kids are not coming back because they are living in a community with their constituents where they are adversely affected in so many different ways. And I know that there are boards in other communities that are saying we have to open yesterday and let's get this thing going. So it really is in the context of the local decision when it comes to that. We were eligible September 1st. We have a handful of districts open. We're now at September 16th, more to follow. And again, it's where is that sweet spot between infection rates, keeping everybody safe, and this push to reopen the economy? Where does that land, and what does it look like in the individual and local context? That's what we try to provide. In terms of just closing back down, it's very simple, 5% in the classroom, which under these conditions is one individual usually. That one kid or staff member tests positive, that classroom is shut down for 14 days. If it's the school context, 5% of that entire school, the entire school shuts down for 14 days. We have already seen that in our county. We have a dependent charter that had a case. We had to close that classroom. We've had a private school that had some cases. They've had to shut down. So it's being nimble, flexible, and the ability, what we told and we're working with our superintendents on, is be prepared for every contingency, be prepared to shift and pivot when these things do and will occur.
And Paul, we do want to say hello to Shelley Long and Edith Jordan McCormick. Apparently, it looks like 2 new viewers that have joined the show, so welcome. One of our loyal viewers, Angela Shaw, Paul, asked, for those districts who are open, what concerns are there regarding the state's lack of passing AB 1384? And just beyond just the school districts, I do want to ask, since you're in the position of county superintendent and you have the opportunity to interact with other county superintendents, what are you hearing as far as AB 1384, and what is the discussion among other county superintendents and your colleagues with respect to that?
Just remind me, this is the liability, the exposure, the O'Donnell bill?
Yes.
So we in our county, we have a JPA that is, risk management division that supports most of our districts. Our general counsel has been working with outside counsel, and I do not have a good answer for this. Number one, it's really hard to prove that it occurs on that site. And they may be able to determine through contract tracing and others, but I think there's also some understanding that from what I've seen is our school is really going to be held liable 100%. I can't answer that question. But we did in our local contacts, we put it forward to the JPA, we put it forward to general counsel. We are supporting that bill and hoping it gets traction again. I don't know what the latest is. But again, we're in the business of educating kids, and at the end of the day, that's not going to stop or prevent us from opening up if we can do so.
Thanks, Paul. One issue you mentioned earlier that I wanted to circle back on, and I know this is something you care deeply about, it is equity. And I think one of the storylines that's coming up now with communities being different and some being able to open, and you said it yourself, in San Diego County, some of those more affluent districts are the ones who are able to get across that line and open, where some districts that may have different populations, different challenges, their COVID rates are different, are not able to. And obviously, so there's equity considerations. And as all of our members are doing the best they can here with distance learning, but it's hard. I mean, we all obviously know it as educators, we know it as parents. So how do we mitigate for that? How do we mitigate for this issue that those that have more means are going to have more access to in-person instruction as we move ahead here?
Well, first and foremost, it's at the front of our conversation every day. Since March, I've met with my cabinet every morning, even if it's for 5 minutes, extended cabinet 2 or 3 times a week, because we have to coordinate all our efforts from the Emergency Operations Center. That's what drives our guidance to districts. And so what I would tell you is there is no good answer, but we've asked our folks to double and triple down on our most vulnerable kids. That just means we have to do more. And I'll give you a couple examples. So no shortage of discussion on the digital divide. But what we've noticed in our county is that many kids, many families who qualify for some of these lower cost initiatives don't even complete the applications. They don't go through the process of completing them, either because of the fear of verification of income level, documentation status. It just stops. So what we decided to do, and what was a little unique in approaching this, was we went to the providers. We went to Cox, we went to Verizon, and we negotiated a completely different set of standards of how we were going to work together and meet the needs of our kids. So long story short, in addition to high-speed broadband, Wi-Fi solutions in-home or hotspot solution, depending on the provider, we get those now for $10 a month. But the difference is the district identifies the family. We send the equipment out there. We pay for this out of our care stimulus package. We are paying the $10 a month. The family doesn't have to do anything. The district just identifies the family with that need. And for $10 a month, unlimited data, high-speed broadband connectivity. Our board of supervisors, again, we went to them, said, hey, this is a serious issue in our community. They gave us $2 million. San Diego Foundation gave us $2 million. We've already connected thousands of kids, but even in times before this did not have connectivity, just because of the ability to connect some of these dots from an equity perspective and say, hey, there are kids that do not have access at all. They haven't. How can we provide a solution without putting them in the middle of the bureaucracy? And everybody stepped up. East County is a little bit different. We're negotiating with SpaceX right now for a satellite solution for our rural areas, and food insecurity, whatever it is. Even our lessons, we are doing home visits with our kids, telephone support. So any way we can get the kids engaged is first and foremost. But setting up some of these centers in some of our neighborhoods where kids have access to learning materials, we're just doing whatever it takes. It is imperfect. It is unfortunate because our underserved communities have been hit hardest by this from a health perspective and an economic perspective. In San Diego County alone, our highest earners, when they pulled the data, 65% of them were able to shift into a telecommuting work mode or working from home. Only 12% of our families who live in our underserved communities could shift to a telecommuting perspective. As you know, most of them essential workers. So we are doubling and tripling down on mental health services, instruction where we can. We even opened up a print shop if we had to do home visits and deliver material and call the kid over the phone. Like I said, it is not perfect. But even prior to the guidance around small cohorts, I sent out a memo to our superintendents and said, go ahead and put your after-school providers out there, get small groups of kids who need the most help and bring them on campus. So we've been doing that even before the latest round of cohort guidance that was put out by the state, just because it was the right thing to do for kids.
Paul, we had Austin Butner from LA Unified, the superintendent, on our show a few weeks back, and he was talking about that initiative to test the teachers, staff, and students for COVID, so they have the opportunity to gain their own data. We're getting questions like Holly Eads' question about how did you secure the funding for testing? And I would ask one other question to add to it, because you just talked about the internet capabilities, the Wi-Fi access, and IDing families with need. Can you just go ahead and clarify how the funding is coming in for testing, but also the Wi-Fi and internet access? Because I think there are members out there that would greatly benefit from hearing that.
So the first on testing, the county in San Diego has about 20 testing sites that are open to the public. When they did an analysis to see if they could accommodate and scale the number of school employees we had in this county, which is over 80,000, they were all in. They not only agreed to fund it, but what we are now doing is putting up regional testing centers to accommodate school employees only. So the county is actually going to staff it. And let me make sure that I had a point of clarification around this. When you're talking about COVID testing, there's so many things that are out there. Surveillance testing with a strip and things of that nature. What I've been told, again, my doctor in front of my name does not give me practice for medicine and epidemiology. I've been told those are not reliable, but some of the swab and the other invasive, those are 99% reliable. So what our county invested in was making sure that we had the full-blown 99% reliable test. We would develop these and open up testing centers at some of our facilities. Some of them are going to be district facilities. And so there's no money that flows through our office. It's just the county paying for the RNs to be there. They're paying for the testing, which they were negotiated down to $50 a test because of the quantity. These are usually tests that cost about $90 a test. And so really what we're just helping with is logistics and what school employees go where and when. And that in and of itself is an incredible task. But the tests are fully paid for by the County Health Department of San Diego through the Board of Supervisors commitment. On your second question, what was your second question?
My goodness, the second question. You know what?
So it had to do with connectivity. I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
What part of it was? So now that the county, the foundation have put the money toward this. So what we do as an office, once the district gives us the list of the addresses of the kids, whatever platform they need, we pay the provider. So we're the intermediary, and we're getting reimbursed through through those grants from the Board of Supervisors and through the San Diego Foundation. We're handling all of the Verizon hotspots for all 42 districts and 160 some charter schools. The Cox commitment, the district pays for, but then they collect the reimbursement from these grants from us. So we're kind of just, again, a middleman and really trying to get the best bang for our bucks. But what's extraordinary about this opportunity is you see some of these things that cost $20 a month. They have caps on data. You know, this is unlimited data, high-speed broadband, $10 a month. So we've already connected thousands of families in a very short amount of time with more orders coming in.
Hey, Paul, you've done a great job of just getting rapid fire, getting a lot of those questions answered. So just appreciate your time and your busy schedule. One more question from me. Demetrius asks that obviously we're talking a lot about return protocols, but one of the questions that comes up quite often is how do we meet the needs, the social emotional needs for staff and students as they start transitioning back to physical campuses? What is the county doing to support our schools on this front, on the social emotional level?
Yeah, great question. So we have two divisions that are working jointly to address this. We have our mental health division. They have a team that supports everything from suicide prevention to mental health to anything under the sun. And then we have our equity team that's really talking about, you can't come back in this environment and just say, we're going to talk about photosynthesis. It's not going to work. You have to talk about what's happened in our communities in the past 6 months. You have to talk about how kids are feeling, based on the issues in our communities. We've hosted a number of webinars, Latinx. We had just recently an African-American student webinar, Young, Black, and Gifted, where our kids spoke to the issues they face in our schools. We've packaged that up as training for teachers. But when it comes to returning, we have to provide that space for people to heal, for whatever that is. And I can tell you that, even in our organization and my colleagues here on the Hill at San Diego County Office of Education, when this was occurring, many of my colleagues were suffering, just navigating their own children through some of the things that were happening. So this is a priority. It's one of those things where we talk about frequently here that, it's really tough to get to the academics without really paying attention to the needs of our children and the adults. And what are the forums that we provide to support them to work through what they've been dealing as individuals, as family members. We've had loss of life. We've had so many different areas where the effects of the political constructs, the community constructs, and everything that's been going on, we have a bank of resources to walk people through this. We found out that a lot of our folks are uncomfortable, our educators facilitating these conversations. So we've had to provide those supports as well. So when you look at our website, when you look at the mental health section, you look at the equity section, all of that is combined on strategies and forums where it doesn't matter if you're a school employee or a kid, we're going to do whatever it takes to support you, no matter what.
Hey, Paul, as we close out, I'm wearing my navy blue and white today to celebrate the return of Big Ten football and my Penn State Nittany Lions. I know you and Edgar are Pac-12 guys, USC guys. I want to get your feedback on the return of Pac-12 football and what the experience is going to be like for you and Edgar through your lens when and if the Pac-12 decides to, show up this year.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I want to just share with you, Marcus Allen is a San Diego product and a proud Trojan. He sits here with me on. The second thing I'd like to share, Oz, is that I have a T-shirt that says "That's how you finish," and it was some Rose Bowl game. I can't remember who SC was playing, but it said "That's how you finish" with Sam Darnold year. I know that must have been a tough game. All kidding aside, if they figured out a way to keep the athletes safe and it just seeing some of the games that are on, even though they don't have fans, it's just a little piece of what we're used to expecting, in this just uncertain and crazy environment that we've been living in the last 6 months. So I have been told, I can't verify this, Edgar might have more information than I, that the Pac-12 is working on a solution on a daily test that actually has a 15-minute turnaround that every single athlete and coach would have to take. And this is kind of what they're waiting for to get the green light in order to do this safely and to do this appropriately. I've been told that's a week or two away. If that, in fact, happens, then you will probably be right behind you.
Now, you see, Edgar, this is what happens. We don't bring a bunch of nobodies onto this show. Paul just broke news for us right here on the show. We actually have it.
Verify it.
Well, no, now, wait a minute.
Hey, I think it's reliable. I think we go to ESPN with it. So
I think so. We're breaking news. Watch out, Twitter. Paul Gothold, the superintendent, the county superintendent, San Diego County. Paul, it's been an honor. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of the day. Talk to you soon.
Edgar, as we have had the third show in a row. We have blown past that 1:30 time frame, folks. We thank you so much for staying with us and so many of your comments and your questions. Lisa Salas Brown, who's literally been watching us from the very beginning, decided to throw Reggie Bush into in her comment. So clearly we got a lot of USC people over there. Hey, I just want to mention to all of you two very important professional development conferences that are coming up. Edgar and I were briefed on these yesterday in one of the many meetings that he and I get to sit in, but we don't actually get to talk to each other during those meetings. ACSA Personnel Institute coming your way at the end of this month. There are myriad issues involving HR and personnel right now in this COVID environment. If you want more information on that, we'll give that to you in just a moment, September 29th through October 1. The other thing we want to tell you about, registration for Leadership Summit, the 2020 All Virtual Leadership Summit opened up on Monday of this week. And Edgar, we've already had nearly 100 people register for the event as of the end of the day yesterday. This is going to be the virtual learning event like you have never seen before. You will have access to every single workshop that is there, some interactive activities, keynote speeches, opportunity to be able to interact with some of those keynoters. Additionally, the AOI Awards ceremony and the Every Student Succeeding Awards ceremony. It's an incredible, incredible event. Edgar, everybody can get more information on both of those, ACSA.org/professional-learning, or you can go right to the homepage of our website, ACSA.org. And Edgar, you guys on your team always do this great presentation on Wednesday when we do the in-person leadership summit. The one comment that I always hear, and you and I are at these events every single year, is you will hear groups of people or maybe one person come in and say, gosh, that was a topic that I really wanted to go to, but I can't because I'm also going to this workshop happening at this time. The really great thing about this all virtual 2020 ACSA Leadership Summit, you have access to every single workshop that is going on, every strand that is taking place. I have to assume, Edgar, that we are going to hear cheers from our members and participants because they can get every single workshop they want to go to.
Yeah, and we'll definitely have a lot to talk about. This is going to be the days after the November election, so there'll be a lot to discuss. There'll be a ton of sessions. And it's pretty exciting to just, we would all prefer to be in person and be there with all of our members and friends, but really proud of the organization for just being nimble and offering these professional development opportunities to our members in a unique way.
Yeah, and again, folks, ACSA.org/professional-learning, or go to our homepage, ACSA.org. Edgar, great show today, man. Paul was good. The number of comments, the number of new viewers that we have coming in has been really, really good to see. Of course, there's so much happening with regard to waivers and attendance. Anything that you think is going to be popping up over the next week out of the Capitol, out of CDE? We talked about the advocacy that ACSA is lending on the attendance issue. Anything over the next week that you think might just come out?
I think there's going to be more conversations about this testing piece. I think there's going to be a lot more to say in terms of how do we get efficient testing to our schools, right? Paul said in just about like being able to have testing in place in order to get our athletes at the college level to play, making those results reliable and quick. I think some of that's going to trickle down, obviously, as it should, to how does that impact our K-12 system. So I think there'll be a lot more to say on that front.
Sounds good. Edgar, good seeing you again today.
Always fun, and thank you for everybody joining. Look forward to seeing you guys next time.
That's right. Thank you, folks, so much for being with us here on the Wednesday ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. Again, we're back here next Wednesday, 1 p.m. for your questions and comments and interaction. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next week.